Hey everyone, welcome to the Clips channel. Did you know this isn't our main channel? Yeah, you should subscribe over and find our main videos and our streams as well. We also have a podcast that you can find wherever podcasts can be found, so explore the internet. See you there. But we're gonna spend 2 of these hours watching these videos so that we can go, so Preachin' Jesse, do you feel the same as you did on August 13th of this year when you said the most divisive MSQ in history? Is that true? Do you still feel that way? Let's kill this here music and have at our first video, which you can find a link to in the description, which is Preach Gaming's FF14 Dawntrail, the most divisive MSQ in history, published on August 13th of this year.
Divisive, that is the word of the day when it comes to Dawntrail, Final Fantasy XIV's latest expansion, and more importantly, the beginning of a new journey for the Warrior of Light after the conclusion of Endwalker. But we do have our mega nerds, Y'shtola and G'raha. They're going to be hanging back and waiting to join the story later. We did see in the trailer they are going to be joining us, and as we go into this new expansion, certain expectations are rife. In top place, of course, it's Krile, our beloved Krile. We can't wait to find out what's going to be happening with her.
Is there any timestamps? Did he record this in advance? No, this is okay. All right, okay.
What do you mean record this in advance?
Well, he's doing a summary as though we summarized in our own heads following trailers and media tour, not how someone would summarize having already played through the game. So it's an interesting, I guess he's gonna flip it on its head, juxtapose in a little bit.
Well, this is the base level stuff that folks who are watching who are never going to play the MSQ would probably already know about.
Fair.
And then, of course, we have the, apparently, I'm not dismissing it, thirst trap that is our bunny boy, Erenville. He's going to be in second place of things we're expecting because people love Erenville very much. Okay. And in third place, of course, is the Dawn Servant. This is going to be dealing with Wuk Lamat and Kona and their mission to solve all these issues that are happening to Thrall in our brand new continent. Now, is that what we got? Kinda? A little bit. Okay. A lot of people have said that Dawntrail's advertising and marketing isn't what they bought. They were marketed and lied to. That is really, really unfair. FF14 goes out of its way because it is a story game first to ensure that there's no spoilers, that everything will be enjoyed in the story, and they give you the tiniest little snippets of things to tease you in, but there's nobody getting into this knowing that, like, oh, they're going to share with me what's going to happen. This isn't World of Warcraft, right? That's not going to happen. However, I do think it's fair to say people's expectations were obviously very high for certain characters to get a lot of screen time, and they wanted that. And in that regard, they did miss the mark. We are, of course, going to be talking about every detail of the MSQ. Spoilers ahead. But here we go. An issue with Dawntrail we have to deal with is that it attempts way, way too much. So much, in fact, that it's hard to structure this video. So I'm going to keep it simple. There's 2 parts, pre and post Dawn Servant. Or more accurately, pre and post trolley. Okay, let's get into the Wuk Lamat subject. I'm sure you're all invested in this. I want to say this. Before we get into the details of how I arrived here, I want to say that I personally believe Wuk Lamat was entirely doomed as a character before we ever clicked the install button. In a recent podcast with Grinding Gear and OK Mage and Jesse Cox, we discussed the idea of the Scions taking a back seat for a while. Maybe they would move away, like we'd seen with Y'shtola and Stormblood, and then come back later on. They kind of did that, but there was a fear, clearly. And instead what they decided to do is what I've dubbed the abuse of the Scions of the 7th Dawn.
Damn. Well, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it looks good on a sign.
You know, this was a unused video title. This got YouTube thumbnail written all over it.
I am aware that he changed his thumbnail several times, and I think he did it with the title too, but we all do it. It's YouTube. It's a YouTube game. It's what you do.
What do I mean by that? I mean they kept dangling them in front of us like a cat with string, so we'd be all excited and happy and our tails would be going, and then they would rip them away from us just as quickly so that we were left frustrated and angry. Have a look at this, because this is probably something you remember of just how many ways they came up with introducing the Scions in an epic fashion and then very quickly taking them away.
Roll the clip.
And we're off. And we're off. And we're off. And we're off.
That was the weirdest one. A lot of those kind of up to their usual bullshit. I'm going to go make cake in town and kind of weird stuff like that. But when they showed up in the server room with the souls, that was like, wait, you went through Vanguard to get,
yeah.
And then you drove by all the people in the town and you went all the way to Solution 9 and you got here now? How did you do that? How did you not stop and marvel at the screens or learn about Electrope on the way here for several hours? Doesn't even seem like you to walk so far.
That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say that Dawntrail feels simultaneously like it takes way too long to get through some shit that feels like I completely get it. Let's move on already, and just like moves so fast at other points and doesn't stop to explore a lot of other quite interesting ideas and character moments and character reactions. That it just seems like, why did we never? We're just never okay. All right, we're just not going to play with that.
I've been doing a mental exercise over the weekend to see if I can plug in those sort of questions to old expansions and find where they were used in the patch notes and see if that frustration does apply to previous ones. Yeah, like patches, like future patches. Like, I always bring up we didn't defeat Nidhogg till the 0.3. Like how many little threads are left dangling to be pulled, and how many are just speed, the speed of things.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. There's one thing I feel like I disagree with Preach here, but it could be poor memory because it's been a while since the beginning of Dawntrail. I don't remember there being a fanfare-laden intro for all of the Scions. I feel like they just kind of showed up.
Yeah, they just kind of wandered around with us, right? And there was the Garlemald excuse, and he did show when Alphino didn't want to do this solo duty.
Yeah, maybe when Y'shtola and Graha pulled up, we got a panning shot of like their shoes as they walk in. I think that was the closest thing to fanfare we got. Estinian just keeps kind of appearing with no fanfare at all. Yeah, the only fanfare we got from the Scions was the fanfare we got from everybody in the defense of Tuliolal scene, where Vitra shows up and defends the city.
The Scions under the idea that when they get together, people get nervous because the world is probably about to explode. I can buy into that, but it doesn't make any sense in Taral. They have no idea who the Scions are, so we can dispense with that reasoning for this separation. Squeenix do have a real issue, though, and they've realized it. The Scions and their friends cover nearly every aspect of friction that they could run up against. They're experts in the physical and the ethereal, so when we encounter tech issues, for example, we should be calling Sid. Massive golden gate with weird ether, Y'shtola and Yuri should be on speed dial.
Yes!
Giant army threatening to overthrow a continent, Estinian and Thancred should be front and center. When we don't do those things, it's just stupid. The Wuk Lamat focus is taken to ludicrous extremes when Solution 9 is about to go to full war, and we have the Scions defending towns with a population of 50 instead of being in the frontline primary battle. Although the cutscene was very, very cool. Wild Westinian is easily one of, if not the most powerful fighter.
What? Which part?
the defending like low pop towns. It's like the game goes out of its way to explain that we weren't expecting it. And also, there's lines of communication issues getting back to Vanguard.
Oh, I thought he was being generous with the 50.
Those are all points in that are in the narrative.
I've been generous with the 50, being like, these are like 50. You're gonna see 5, but I'm assuming about 50. So
that's not what I'm not disagreeing with the population.
Okay,
I'm disagreeing with the location of the Scions during the attack.
On Ethereus. So how does this affect what I think of Wuk Lamat? It built constant resentment to the character. Oh, cool! Y'shtola and Graha are here with all the fanfare and music. This is going to be awesome. We have a golden city door, and now the nerds are here to crack it open, and we have a whole new dynamic to the story, and they're gone. Now, I don't know the reason for this, Perhaps they thought they couldn't have the Scions involved, but it's not their story, so they're there, but they're not because it needs to be about Wuk Lamat. Perhaps the voice actors are getting too expensive now, or busy with other projects, like Graha is in a popular TV show. It's noticeable with Y'shtola's voice mix. It's way lower quality than the rest. Did she see that she only had 20 lines for the entire expansion or so and just send it from her house? There are many possibilities, but as it's always had, our beloved characters are just being sent away all the time so we can go back to Wuk Lamat, and
that's 500 something I would have brought up if I was never live streaming.
500?
Like the Y'shtola line quality. Like if you and I were sitting in a room, we never streamed it together, I'd be like, hey, does Y'shtola sound kind of weird, Garrett? And you'd probably be like, yeah, it's kind of FF12-y. Was it like compressed? What's going on there? You know, was there something going on? But it's not a conversation I want to have with live chat, so I've never brought it up. I've of course noticed it, but I've never wanted to bring it up.
We talked a little bit about just the mix in general being really inconsistent from scene to scene. Like sometimes they like nail how it should sound in the room that they're in, where they really get the echo and the reverb kind of dialed in for the size of the room or cave, or not being in a cave at all, mixing in shit like wind and that and the sort, and it works. And then there's a lot of scenes where it's completely off base. It sounds like they did drag and drop echo in an Adobe Premiere and they didn't tweak anything. Volumes multiple times are kind of all over the place. So we've had a few conversations like that.
So, with that said, how much do I like Wuk Lamat? Well, not much, sadly. Look, I don't hate Wuk Lamat. I really don't. I actually have a lot of time and a lot of forgiveness for that character. But she was speedrun through a crazy story arc that needed a lot more time between it and a lot more breaks to allow it to grow and breathe. I truly believe they should have done Wuk Lamat's growth period of time during the Endwalker MSQ. It's actually, if you think about it, remarkably similar to what Zero goes through. We have these two characters which are kind of blank canvases and ignorant of the world, introduced into new environment and new culture, and they go through growth to eventually become someone we can kind of rely on and utilize in battle and all kinds of things like that. But they couldn't. Probably because she's a Hrothgar. They wanted to save the reveal of the new race until closer and closer to Dawntrail. It's too much. Dawntrail has way too much to do. They've got to take this absolutely blank slate of Wuk Lamat, get her all the way to being the Dawn Servant, and then they needed to introduce a brand new villain and have her tackle those issues and go through that whole story, and it created all kinds of weird pacing issues in the story. Dawntrail's MSQ is both...
What was the purpose of Wuk Lamat's hat? Were we like...
Now we're asking.
Were the ears not done yet? Like, yeah, what's the... Like, that's an interesting theory that things... That production tied with hype caused a character to be delayed. That's a very practical reason for not exploring her more in the patch content.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much you should read into that. Like, where the hell does she fit in like point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5? They clearly had a 5-patch story they wanted to tell with 0 and the 13th, and I don't think Wuk Lamat fits in there at all.
Yeah, I don't know where you shove her in.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm not getting that vibe whatsoever. Yeah, my issues. Yeah, this is interesting because I don't. None of this, like some of the voice acting stuff, I agree with. But no, where I get like my issue with Wuk Lamat is like boredom, because the character feels the same for the whole expansion. And it's interesting bringing up 0. I was expecting him to mention that 0 at least goes on like kind of a classic hero's journey where she kind of rejects it. We got to kind of convince 0 to be a hero. Whereas Wuk Lamat is just, I'm all for it, like all the time. There's like no point where she questions if she can do the job, but she doesn't really question if, I don't know. She's just relentlessly positive and doesn't feel like there's a lot of character growth there because she's already a like lawful good when we meet her. And she just stays there. So that's where I get bored with the character. I'm
not at all shocked by this graph of Wuk Lamat. I am a little shocked of Kafkiwa being higher than Krile. That seems weird.
That's part of the reason I'm still whining.
It's a
about
score,
Kryle's
like, and it's
expansion.
an arbitrary score of, and as we talked
this
about, it's
doesn't surprise me
arbitrary
at all.
what they try to
This-
voice act sometimes too.
This story is about Wuk Lamat. This graph makes sense.
Yes.
Fiend coming in second place makes sense.
Makes sense.
It'd be like, oh my god, have you seen how many Emmett lines are on
This is
Shadowbringers?
ridiculous.
Like nobody's surprised.
I'm livid.
All kinds of weird pacing issues in the story. Dawntrail's MSQ is both extremely slow and it's way too fast in places. Wuk Lamat got least at the start. She's way too ignorant of her homeland for me to enjoy. I can pretend that she was extremely sheltered as a child to protect her from would-be assassins and never really left Tuliolol, but that still doesn't add up to how unaware she is of the people of her homeland. Tuliolol from the get-go is shown that ever since the Dawn Servant came to be, it's culturally diverse as hell. Wuk Lamat even takes us on a historical tour of the tablets, showing the rich history of the Dawn Servant and the people that Daddy came to rule over and bring together. She tours us the city, showing the culinary delights, the marketplace full of people from all over Taral, yet she at the same time knows absolutely nothing whatsoever about them. It's as if she's seen these like weird still 2D images of people her entire life and never once interacted with them, which we know isn't true. Now, I get it. It's to allow us to learn of the cultures of Taral, this new zone that we're exploring through her eyes, but her ignorance just doesn't add up. She's never in her life known of the Hanu Hanu greeting, for example, despite being at their festival at least once before. So I guess we're to assume that the Hanu Hanu never greeted anyone in a traditional way at their annual traditional festival, or that despite their heavy presence...
I don't like that.
What?
I don't like that, Freach. No, don't. I've got my own issues. Don't go shattering the illusions of other bizarre things I didn't think about. I don't need other weird things coming to mind.
The marketplaces that she spent her entire childhood life in, she isn't aware of the Pelu Pelu traits of trading. I've seen lots of people try to justify this.
Yeah, I go to New York a lot. New York is culturally diverse, but I don't know that much about the cultures that I interact with. Like, just because I go to a lot of like Jewish delis, it doesn't mean I'm suddenly cultured in Judaism. Like, I don't know that much about that culture.
Yeah, the microcosms of a city. Yeah, I agree. That never really bothered me because I kind of just did that like, oh, she's a city girl kind of thing. I didn't really understand why she was a warrior, but to me, warrior is always more barbarian and less like love of life, the health, energy thing that I'm sure is covered in some warrior quest I don't know about. But I'm like, if Dad loves you, why does he want you to be all ragey all the time? That doesn't seem right. Why are you yelling and kicking people and taking hits to the face?
But you're not like the heir to New York. I mean, I think you could. I don't know. This is not the only heir to New York. It wasn't 100% certain that she was going to become the leader. Although, yeah, that's fair. That's fair because she actually does want to become leader. She the second we meet her, she's like, I want to do this. It's like, okay, probably should have been studying up to this point. But yeah, it's interesting. And again, like to me, it would have been a little more interesting if she had a character fault of not wanting to learn and then having to learn and realizing the importance of it.
Oh, sure. The eagerness to lead while also... I think that's why it's always so interesting to have that archetype of I don't want to be the leader. Then you should lead. That's why you should lead. And that's a classic story trope we have. So you stack too many eagers together, you get yourself an unauthentic feeling character.
That's a good point, Beatrix. Beatrix says the reason why she wants to do it is to stop Zoralja, not because she actually wants to be leader.
Yeah, because he can't be it, right?
That's fair. That's fair. I would maybe liked that water balloon pushed a little more in the direction again of like actively rejecting the setup of the trial, being like, well, I don't want to do all this because I just need to stop my brother, and then eventually realizing there's no rejection with Wuk Lamat, and that's I think what makes her boring.
And even stumbling into power and screaming from the top of the temple, I will defeat my brother, then I will be Dawn Servant, could have caused that momentum to seem more organic rather than constant reward and confirmation of her ideals we knew from the beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe she forgot. Well, she was a child and child is stupid. I have 2 kids. It just doesn't work that way. I was desperately waiting, and I truly believe this was a negative for Wuk Lamat to not have to deal with this. But when her happy-go-lucky, power of friendship attitude would meet somebody who is going to say no. No. Someone who genuinely is an evil person that we know exists in the real world, who would manipulate, who would change, who would utilize humans' lives and suffering, as we well know, for their own gain, and tell her to do one. That could be a real friction that character could come up against where this attitude just doesn't work. And it just never happened. So those are my thoughts on Wuk Lamat.
As Baby King. Next patch, Baby King comes out and like, I'm a huge jackass. I was bred in a lab to be a huge jackass and the most evil thing you've ever seen in your life. And we get that character growth on the other side of the main MSQ.
Wait, you're saying Baby King's going to be the villain?
Yes, Baby King is big villain. Big villain we never saw the whole time.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to. There's going to be some kind of new threat. Or it's got to be battle combat for some reason. But like, I don't know. I could see it. My fear is it becomes a little more like the first half of Dawntrail, and it's like, oh, we're pulling out Svine's memory of the crown, and it's all very calm, and we're just trying to learn about this society. That's my fear about the patch content.
I mean, it is interesting. I'm curious to see if this trend continues in future RPGs.
This is just another story with an established historical, factual, deep history for them to draw on, but it's just hand-waved so we can go into an epic trolley building cutscene.
Okay, before that happens.
I did think it was weird that we were just like, and here's the stand-in for Native Americans. Anyway, like it was like we moved on from it so fast. I'm not even sure why it was included. I do think we're gonna touch on it in the patch content.
Yes,
but at that point, just introduce it in the patch content because.
Or tell us
we say hi to them and that's it.
Yeah, tell us to F of, and then and then we'll be like, oh, well, that'll be interesting someday, and we can address it. The fact that they're like, no, we have these concerns, but you seem cool, you can take the wood, was odd, and it does come with that expectation that Breach is talking about of what we know of reality. But I don't think it's so much like what we know of reality. It's that the game has taught us so far to follow reality as a baseline for how social situations will go in this war-torn world. Now we're in Talio Lol, which isn't war-torn, but we've been taught by the structure of the game to expect those things. So I don't think it's wrong to point out reality in the face of that.
Not all doom and gloom, though. One of the stories I thought...
It's out of place. I get why it became a meme. It is out of place.
He muted it.
They handled supremely well in the pre-trolley era of the MSQ was Wuk Lamat's biological father. And it's so wonderful that we see later on how proud he is when she actually rises to the Dawn Servant, and how... such a crying shame that he had to listen to that song. Yay! Idyllic society with no flaws.
Does Smile earn another pause for you? Any comments?
No, I actually completely agree, and it's why I don't really care for the first half of this expansion. It's very...
What the fuck is this song?
That I disagree with. The song made sense here.
The song is solid.
Okay. I suppose here's a good time to talk about some of the scenes that seem to have been not retconned.
And I blame Preach for just everyone being insufferable about this song.
He might not be the source, and he may have received like the flow went his way, you know, in the you move a stick and the water flows, and like those people who hated it ended up in Preach's chat, and then it gained strength and gained downhill momentum. But it does seem like the mute was quite powerful in the minds of those who agreed.
Oh, it's probably the funniest reaction to it.
Oh, absolutely. It's fabulous.
Easily.
It's fabulous.
It's goddamn hilarious.
The death of Galul Jar Jar. This started so damn well. The cool Jar Jar's path to redemption.
I already know I'm going to disagree.
What? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Let's
the
hear it.
horror in the streets as the citizens were being cut down, seemingly their essence being sucked right out of them, and the showdown between father and son. However, the actual death scene really hit me, and I know it hit many others very wrong. Look, man, I can buy that it was honorable and culturally appropriate for the one-on-one at the very start. But the resurrection of Zeral should have absolutely had the entire Scion army jumping in immediately to help. Certainly when he popped the Berserk button. Now, I know people suggest it all happened in an instant like a D&D turn, but I've rewatched this thing several times. That is just not what happens. Zeral has a very slow, drawn-out dialogue and build-up after the resurrection, before then going on the offensive with clashing swords while everyone just pointlessly watches on, and they even cut to reacts from the onlookers like TikTokers on the prowl. I hated this, but it was then made worse later on in the outskirts. Wuk Lamat is about to confront Zeral Jar, and here Alize makes a huge deal about how if it ever looks unfair, and I understand the cultural attack, then we're getting involved because it could be moronic not to do that. And I was screaming, yes, it would be moronic not to do that. Once again, it felt like they were trying to rectify a problem that they had found in testing. It's also a case of not having to put characters in this situation in the first place and avoid this whole mess entirely. Tuliolol is being sieged. Have the Scions blockaded from the throne room, having to watch on in distress, or have the room full of Zeral Jar's guards slowing them down, something other than just standing and watching him and let him leave. Now, I know a lot of people actually don't mind this. I really mind this. But thankfully, we're moving on. The weaponized trolley is built.
It's very easy to make assumptions knowing Preach does not watch anime, that he has not been thoroughly desensitized to this, and it bothers him because it is so tropey and it happens so often, particularly like cutscene, showing everyone's reaction to it. Like in many animes, you have basically a caster character who is voicing over the match. This happens in JoJo. This happens in Yu-Gi-Oh! Brock up in the stands and Pokemon, like someone's always being like, well, if that attack hits, then this will happen. And it, like, it's your Luke Skywalker kind of in to know what's going on. I think it would have bothered me if other things didn't bother me, maybe. Like, it's so low on my list of botherdom that I didn't escalate it as a serious affront to how I process a story. But I do agree that a shield, Phantom Menace it, watch from behind a shield. For some reason, that engine room goes and closes little doors. I don't know why, but hey, let's just put some doors in the way.
Yeah, I don't. It's a trope. It's not a trope I particularly love, but it's not high on the list of my dislikes. I knew what they were going for, and again too, I still think there's like my thought at the time too was just like, well, if they're just gonna bomb the city if we kill the leader. Like, I don't know. It was new information. I understood what they were trying to get across. Is it the best executed thing in the world? No. But I had already run afoul of other tropes that are higher on my list of, oh boy, I'm not a fan of this. Like just over positivity being a big one. That's probably what I agree with the most here with Preach's critiques is everything just feeling kind of idyllic and there's no flaws and it's not even that I always want that from my fiction, but I have come to expect it from 14 because they've done it they've been pretty nuanced in like every other story leading up to this point. He uses Zen Walker as an example, which I think is a bit dangerous because folks who already disagree with you are going to throw it in your face that M. Walker is the end and it's going to be larger and heavier and more bombastic. But you could go all the way back to A Realm Reborn and you have a literal group of Boy Scouts with like the Crystal Braves, which has nuance and dissenters and becomes a major plot point because of that. You can move ahead to Heavensward, where nothing about the society is idyllic. You could then step ahead to Stormblood, where nothing about those societies are idyllic. There is strife beyond just Zaralja, who doesn't agree with what's going on, that makes the societies of Realm Reborn through Endwalker a tapestry. It has layers. It makes it interesting. It makes it believable. And I felt a lot of that was missing in Dawntrail.
Well said.
So, let's blow it up and meet definitely not sus AF Queen Sphene.
What? Why do we go into the armpit?
It gets going. The big reveal of the threat in the previews to Dawntrails is here. Sphene is so sus. It is way more sus than the first time we met Meteion, and time has moved on. Immediately, I was hit with that familiar FF14
I didn't
joy
trust
of
Meteion's monster
speculation.
feet.
Have we time traveled? Is this even our world or a reflection?
Bird feet are creepy.
Erenville's scared to death. It's all gotten weird. The USB people are hella suspects, and Mommy's a floating robot leading a rebellion, and also she is very blatantly already dead. I was loving
Super
pretty
obvious.
much everything from this moment on. My sci-fi nerd brain was in overdrive, and so many questions and possibilities raised, most of which got discussed, especially the overriding thought: Solution 9 can never, ever work. I was ecstatic that Graha pointed this out to Sphene, and she had to ignore it. Her programming just doesn't account for failure, just to preserve the system, save the people. That's her job. Sphene is honestly the most tragic character in the story. How manipulated has she been by those who brought her back to enact their vision of paradise? What traits, memories, and so on were taken to set her on this path? Especially because it's revealed she can alter her program. Has she done it before? For what reason? Is she even remotely close to the original queen at all at this point? The whole concept of Solution 9 is terrifying. Namika is such a wonderful character for this poisoned paradise to play out. A loving, caring surrogate mother who spent her entire life caring for others, just to be forgotten on a whim. And she had a lovely resolution in living memory. As you can tell, overall, I very much enjoyed the final 3 zones of the game. It isn't perfect, and I mentioned some of those moments earlier with random Scion appearances, and it set up the future. We have a key in our hands, Azem's involvement, and an ever-decreasing reason as to why we can't move between reflections. The future is going to be very bright.
Could this be? Villainy! You seek to bewilder me for purposes most foul!
I love Lotus.
But so far we have discussed Wuk Lamat.
So I saw a review in our chat. This is a while ago of like, oh, Preach just rushed through. Everything was like, where's Solution 9? Where's Solution 9? Sounds like that was very much to his interest. He freaking loves sci-fi.
It sounds like that was the right call for him.
Yeah, he sounds like he was extremely passionate about everything that happened in Solution 9 and Living Memory.
If that's even if that is a valid representation of what actually happened.
Yeah.
'Cause sometimes people take liberties when they disagree with things.
Oh, that's fair.
Matt's story. Remember, that was number 3 on the list of things that we were excited for about Dawntrail. But what of the Bunnyman? And what, of course, of our good lady Krile? I can't say I was enamored as others with Erenville coming into Dawntrail. I like him fine, but not much more than that. However, I do care about Krile, and our girl got screwed. Our girl got totally screwed. When this was announced, and it was going to be seemingly Krile-centric, she got the new job. She was coming along with us to this thing. We obviously, I think many of us suspected Krile was going to be a pretty central figure in the main story, and our girl gets hand-waved off every single time. Oh, your cool thing's like a USB storage drive. It's probably got valuable information on it. We'll talk about it later. And our 15 minutes of fame with Krile does come in living memory. If you were to tell me, like, picture in your scene, right? Picture in your mind that we're going to have Krile reunite with her parents who left her all those 20-odd years ago and left her with some strange tech, and now we discover she came through this bizarre portal to another world, another reflection. What would that encounter involve? And you would say, I'm 99% sure, Mike, that would have an ice cream fetch quest and then a player quiz is what goes with that scene. I would have been like, what? But it is how it plays out. Now, here's the thing.
Not a fan of the deep-throating Graha.
It fits their characters. It does. The 2 parents are obviously as scientifically minded as Krile is, Krile has an endless thirst of knowledge. There's a social awkwardness there that Graha breaks up. It's a little gratuitous, sure, but I get it. It opens the conversation. They start some dialogue. But then that's just as soon as we got through this, because they blue balls the hell out of it. It's like, please talk, please say something. And then they finally talk, and she immediately leaves because she's found a cool library to go and investigate where we can do tests. Awesome. We do get the answers we're looking for. That is ultimately the truth. But I know I'm not the only one here. We just wanted more. We wanted more Krile. A little less Wuk Lamat, a little bit more Krile in that cake recipe would have gone a long way. Because yes, we did get what we kind of wanted out of it, but I think we just felt disappointed. As the story came to a close, the latter half gave me hope. I don't hate Dawntrail, and I believe what Yoshi P said at the US media tour, that this MSQ was to show what fans were and weren't receptive to, and that would guide them going forwards. But it's clearly flawed, and it's deserving of its mixed response. I would really summarize my issues like this. Firstly, pacing. The potentially interesting stuff was sidelined for seemingly the most mundane of tasks. I said earlier it's both slow and rushed. It's a consequence of just having way too much to accomplish. Heaven's Ward, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker had a primary singular focus for us to think about. The Dragonsong War, the Rejoining, the Despair, everything else added layers to that focus and built characters along the way while still following that one central path. Dawntrail tries to build a whole continent, several characters, a new villain after the halfway mark, their entire backstory, and conclude it. It feels like throwing too many ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks. Secondly, the abusing of the Scions. Either have them or don't. Wuk Lamat was going to be resented regardless of how much people liked her. The phrase, "I can't miss you if you don't go away," comes to mind. Our eyes light up when Sid, Nero, Emmerich, or Gosetsu show up because we know we're going to change the dynamic of the story for a while. Having fan favorites show up, then just run away.
Oh no, he's just dying while they're coming up with all their excuses to stay behind. Aw.
The hand on the face.
Yeah, it was so practical, but yeah, I've been there. DMing, telling players.
There were so many angles that had to get covered in that one zone. Like, how could you bring more characters with you and do any like it? Because I don't disagree with Preach here. I wanted more Krile. I liked the resolution that Krile got, but I would have liked to have that kind of spread out over the whole expansion. I would have liked Krile to be more important, more threaded in, to kind of keep us grounded to where we came from and the Scions and all of our friends from the past, while also meandering through the right and Wuk Lamat and traveling through Tyral into Solution 9. Personally, I think I would have enjoyed that balance a little bit more. But if you think, I like what happened with Krile and Solution area in Living Memory, but it all feels a bit rushed. It's hard to make an argument for bring more important characters with you to the meet dead people land.
And same thing with
how do you fit in stories for them?
Same thing with Kiwan. Like we had to wait all the way from this point where we knew she was dead upon meeting her for the first time to the end, and we're going to make that even longer now. It's a problem. There was no threat for them to defend. Maybe that shores things up, but this is all just plug and leaks. You know, we're just standing there putting our fingers in the wall, trying to see what we can get to keep going.
So we can get back to what we've already been doing for the last 20 hours is frustrating at best. Thirdly, the predictions of what fans would like and dislike by Squeenix here was off the mark. No, I don't love Wuk Lamat. I don't hate her, but she's overwhelming everything else to an absurd degree. I truly believe internally they thought everyone was going to love her completely and not mind spending the entirety of the story alongside her. I would have preferred like the Emmerich or Hien approach. They're around a lot during their main story, but then they have other things to focus on, sometimes to give some space. Someone can say for Bakul Jar Jar, right? He unironically has the best story arc of all the characters. Dawntrail genuinely doesn't do that much different than every other expansion. The difference is this time it's a fresh story, a fresh journey, and we're not already invested into what the next step of a previous story is. This is all brand new, and therefore we have just less forgiveness for its flaws. There are flaws in every single part of the previous MSQs, and there are missteps here. I'm sure in Japan right now, they are looking at all the feedback and deciding what are we going to do. I truly believe when Yoshi P told the US media tour people that this is throwing stuff at the wall. See what sticks. What do fans like? What do they don't like? And that will shape the direction of where we're going forward, similar to what happened in A Realm Reborn. Now, they obviously have a master design of what the story is going to be for content creation's sake, but now they will decide which way to go. Will they bench Wuk Lamat entirely and just move her out of the way? Or will they double down and try and rescue her?
Doesn't seem like it.
It did work for Lise in Stormblood, at least for me in the post-MSQ, so they could go that way. There's a lot for them to solve now. Why was the reception so mixed? Why did they miss the mark with so many different things? Is it a collision of the East-West finally coming to head in a new story? Is it simply player expectations are completely different? Do they want that younger audience instead and they need to move in a different direction? Who knows where it's going to go? But one thing I do know, we have a magic key. We know Azem's involved. And we know that they are dramatically running out of ways to not have us explore all the other reflections. And we're going to be going on an adventure. And I'll certainly be there for it. My final conclusion, Dawntrail, divisive. See you again.
What a 5-paragraph essay. Well
Absolutely
done. Well
adorable.
done. Very well done. Excellent.
It was an exceptionally laid out,
It was.
constructed video.
He took the whole thing too, which is something we haven't done. That is a lot to take in one breath to try to cover all in one go. That was impressive. I am infinitely fascinated by the topic of were they trying to reach a younger audience? I think that is fascinating. I think it's insane.
I can't imagine that's what they were trying to do. I think they were again. I don't. We're gonna get to talk. To Mike today. So like I don't want to like say too much without him here. But I know Mike's not a big anime fan, and so I just go like I think they were going for shonen, which it's kind of just this. Like it is kind of kiddie, even though people punch each other to death routinely in that type of show. But it does feel childish at times, which I can't speak for everyone. I know there's plenty of shonen fans out there that will just watch everything. I'm in the camp of I found it really hard to enjoy any shonen past my first, which was Dragon Ball Z. Naruto came out. I tried to watch it, and I was like, I like Dragon Ball Z more. And then Bleach after that, and then I've tried One Piece a couple times, and so on and so forth. It's been very difficult for me to get into shonen past my first. And I've got a lot of friends that are the same way. I've got friends that like want to wring my neck because I won't get into Naruto, but they only like that. They don't like anything else because that was their first shonen.
I do the same thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm there. I'm like, this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh!'s deck. This is some kid with a Scouter-on's deck. His deck's boring. Where's Karibo? The information and that nostalgia and those are all like that's a very powerful word. I think what happens the most in these conversations is younger audience gets misinterpreted as immature, and that's not the case at all. In fact, I would say the generation below us is even more aware of the societies of the world and the state of the world, but they choose cozy more often than we would. And something like,
it's continuing your thoughts. Sorry, you're heading in. You went in a direction I wasn't expecting you to take. Go.
So last week, one of my favorite Twitter threads went up. The so and so is ruining everything guy. The guy who just takes news clips from like 1910 and then lays them out to like 3 years ago. And he did. No idea who you're talking about. He did 20 years ago. Halloween used to mean something, and he posted news clips of 1950s, 1960s, and everyone complaining about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, how Halloween used to be better, going all the way back to when we would consider Halloween used to be better. And it fascinated me because I took my kids on Halloween, and I was kind of like, oh, these houses really didn't like go all out. Oh, the kids are kind of like, they're not really as in costume as I was. Was it really that way? Or did I picture a single projection of a ghost on a wall and be like, holy freaking moly? And I saw an inflatable of Santa like popping out of a chimney, and I'm like, oh my God, like a freaking Santa popping out of a chimney. And is that nostalgia so powerful that we apply those memories and skew everything?
Yes, 100%. You forget all the boring houses. You remember that one house that went all out because it was like 30 plus years ago for you. And you don't have that good of a memory.
Right, and you don't remember all those weird references you don't understand. You remember that one kid that was like 6 foot And he was wearing that really creepy ass mask, and it was messed up, and you were like scarred by that. And like all these memories make Halloween so intense, but when you look at it as an adult, you're like, wow, this is kind of lame. And I'm finding myself in a place where I'm like, well, maybe we do, like with this changeover, have a new generation of writers, and we're not giving them time. You know, we met these companies when they were at maybe their height, maybe their practiced execution, and these ships continue to sail in a corporation under the same title despite the people changing. And what will this exact writing team look like in 5 years? And maybe I don't think it's, and I think that's where people really argue with the childish part, or they think something like when someone says, oh, this was childish, I don't think they're saying that it's necessarily immature. We can ask about this today too. But there's a difference in values and perspective and how hard we used to feel something used to go in the past. When actually maybe it just went as hard as this.
I don't think it did, which is like the whole reason I bring up like Realm Reborn.
It's easy. Yeah. Final Fantasy is an easy one.
More of a tapestry.
We just gauntleted this. We did this huge MSQ over the course of 3 years. There is no like, wow, this game has changed a lot since insert game from 10 years ago that is a completely different feeling. No, that had a very similar feeling all the way through to the end of Endwalker.
The thing I've been trying to check myself, anytime something rubbed me the wrong way with Dawntrail, because I knew heading in, after we got back from our summer break, like the discourse was inescapable. There was just a feeling in the room like, oh no, I'm getting people who hate Last Jedi as their entire personality energy from the room. Like that's like, and I find that exhausting. I'm like, okay. So like I've had my guard up the whole time. And every time I find something not landing, I've been trying really hard to ask myself, am I mad about this for personal reasons or because it clashes with the expectations set by Final Fantasy XIV itself? And I would say with the exception of not liking Kafkiwa, most of the things I don't like hold up under the scrutiny of, I feel like the game has taught me to expect better than this. Kafkiwa, I think, is a personal thing. Although at the same time, I still feel like they just completely ignored the damn.
I think that
it's been 30 years for her and a couple days for Arnville.
I think that's fair. I think that's all quite fair.
Yeah.
We also, find ourselves in an odd age of talking about video games with tons of wolves in sheep's clothing, and you can't be like, man, I sure didn't like the gameplay in there. Yes, and the women too. And you're like, what?
No,
what
get out of here.
That had
what
nothing
are you
to
doing?
do with anything. What are you even talking? Get off my ship. I'm setting sail. Get off the ship. Get off the ship. I'm going to go on the gameplay was boring ship. All right, here we go.
Yes, and sexism. Like, no,
like,
I wasn't talking about that. I don't agree with you.
And I get Discord messages like this too, where people will be like, yeah, that scene's pretty rough. I agree with you. Also, link to video, and you're like, okay, all right.
How have you been watching us this long and you think we're going to get on that ship with you? Like,